Welcome to this very interesting panel discussion on Talent for Tomorrow, Agile Talent Strategies. This is the third episode of Smart HR series, Dispersed Yet Connected, we are doing in partnership with Right Management. I'm happy to share with all of you the context of today's discussion, but first I will introduce the eminent panel present here. Madhavi Lal, MD and Head HR, Deutsche Bank. Namrata Gil Tyagi, VP HR, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. Amit Sharma, VP HR, Volvo Group India. Rahul Sinha, CHRO, Pidilite Industries. Ashish Jain, VP Right Management. And I'm your moderator, Pooja Bothra. Thank you for being here. I would now like to welcome the audience too. Thank you for being here. You can use the chat tab on your screen to ask a question. The speakers will be more than happy to take all your questions. Now I'd like to set the context for this panel discussion. It has become a pertinent to continuously evolve talent philosophy and strategies to develop a strong talent pipeline with the changing business environment. Regardless of the industry or demographics, human capital planning and development have become a topic of significant global concern. Talent agility is critical for organizational development, growth, and sustainability. The big question here is how well is India responding to this? We are lucky to have a diverse panel of discerning leaders to deliberate, debate, and discuss a game-changing strategy to build an agile talent culture. The first question for all the panelists here is, what is your talent strategy and which attribute is most important to you in nurturing talent? Is it purpose, performance, culture, or something else? Welcome once again, all of you. I'd request Madhavi to take this question.
First of all, Pooja, thanks to you and the ETHR world for having me on this panel. I always learn a lot from these sessions, and I'm happy to share some of the perspectives that I've gained over the years. So if you just I think our talent strategy is obviously really around getting the best person to do the role, and of course has the potential to grow. So very simple terms, and to my mind, you raised a point about performance, purpose, culture. Of course, these are absolutely important, and obviously the person also there has to be resonance with our values of the organization as well. I think we also really focus on getting diversity in our employee base, at this point, because we feel that if we don't start building that diversity in our workforce, we will lose out as an organization. And if I were to look at the attribute aspect that you talked about, for me, it would be the attitude really, I personally look for somebody with a can-do attitude and also somebody who has high tolerance for ambiguity. I mean, the world's really sort of becoming more and more ambiguous every passing year, and there's been rapid development of technology and so many changes around. I think people really need to be able to hold their ground in this fluid and unstructured environment. The other criteria I also look for is excellence. That doesn't really mean academic excellence. I think it's excellence in some field or some passion, the field the person is passionate about, and I always look to hire people who are passionate, committed, and excited to learn.
Thank you, Madhavi. So attitude and spirit of excellence. Great insights here. Going to you, Amit, what would be the most important attributes that you look in talent?
When I look at our talent strategy, we need to understand that a talent strategy for any organization is very deeply rooted into what your organizational strategy is. So for us, what we are looking at is, as an organization, how can we create vehicles which are 100% safe, 100% fossil-free, 100% more productive? And how do we really create the world's most sustainable transport system? So that's the larger objective with which we are working. So for us, the talent has to be someone who's able to help us achieve this sense of purpose, achieve this larger objective or vision for the organization. So what does it really mean for us in that sense? Because as an organization, we are into various verticals. We are into trucks, buses, construction equipment, engines, and various further technology divisions and all for that. So the key thing for us is a talent who's able to understand end-to-end perspective and not really work in silos. Because when you're going to a customer, you can't go to a customer separately across 2, 3 or 4 different businesses. You need to have one face to the customer, and you also need to have the full picture. So the key aspect is, how do we have a talent which has end-to-end perspective, a talent which knows how I contribute rather than solve the given task. It's not about somebody who takes instructions, but somebody who understands and has a self-initiative and motivation to do things and make things work better. A talent which is able to collaborate better across the organization internally to create the right solutions for the customers. At the same time, collaborate externally with our partners to fulfill our customer needs. A talent which is able to network, because one of the key things for us is how do you able to leverage a larger network, and how you are able to influence people without authority. So how can we have a talent which has these attributes? A talent which is more guided by principles rather than policies or by procedures. So many times people get really bogged down into SOPs and the processes, and they lose out the larger picture, why that SOP was created, or why that principle was, why that policy was created. So a talent which is, able to look beyond and challenge the current processes if they are not making sense, and if you have to serve a larger purpose, you are able to flex it. So those are some of the key attributes, and one of the fundamental aspects in our talent which we are looking at, especially in the Volvo Group, is, as we say, that how can we have a talent which sheds the tyranny of or and leverages the power of and. Somebody who's able to hold the polarities together, like common and unique. How do you able to do it both? How are you able to work in a centralized environment as well as decentralized environment both? Where you need to have a common process, where you need to have a unique process, where do you need to have a collective fairness, where do you need to manage individual expectations, where you need to continue with legacy, where you need to have a futuristic focus. So a talent which is able to manage these polarities and hold them well is the kind of talent which we are looking at, and that's what our focus has been in the Volvo around our talent strategy.
Thank you, Amit. Really interesting points coming out there. And, flexibility looks like is a very important thing for progressive talent. Namrata, what would your insight be?
I'll start with what is one thing that is non-negotiable, right? Whenever at any stage of talent in HR process, whether hiring, promoting, giving hikes, I think one thing that we look for is aspirational mindset. Is the person aspirational enough? That is non-negotiable. Having said that, the second thing we look for, does the person question the why of things? We always look for depth people, right? Are you questioning the why we are doing it? What perspective are you going to bring? The purpose of the company. For example, Dr. Reddy's purpose is giving affordable medicines. Do you believe in the purpose? It's just a lip service. Do you think what you're doing indirectly or indirectly? Third attribute, which has come very strongly, is resilience. In the pharma world, we are very dynamic. We have lots of ups and downs. How easily you can cope with it, right? So how do you cope with it? A molecule doesn't get approved, gets approved, a molecule doesn't get launched. How do you cope? So these three things. I want to give a personal perspective, and especially when hiring, what do I look for? I look for two things. Has the person failed enough, right? And is the person able to talk about his or her failures very openly? And the second thing I look for, as Madhvi said, is passion. What is really the person passionate about? What keeps him going? Is it running? Is it collecting books? Is it just collecting movies? One passion that really drives you. So those are the things that I look for. Thank you.
Thank you, Namrata. Very interesting, especially I'm very happy that you brought about the point of failing, because it's very important in today's time to fail and then get up and get going. Rahul, what about you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me here, and let me just get a sense of what we stand for as a company. Pidilite is known to be an innovative company that has been around now for quite some time, 60 plus years. And we are building an Indian multinational to sustain an innovative, high-performance culture. We look at few things. First and foremost, we look at whether the person has an entrepreneurial approach. We don't want to hire people who are wedded or stuck to a role document but we want people who are willing to identify opportunities and go that extra mile in making that happen. People who can champion their own ideas. Next comes for us is the whole ability to come up with fresh and new ideas. And coupled with that is a very keen interest in understanding the ground level reality and having a frontline connect. You know, what we have realized in our line of business, if you understand your frontline, you understand the carpenters, the plumbers, the masons, and you're able to get that into your business, you actually go a long, long way. For us, equally important is that the person sets high benchmarks and is able to carry the team along, helping them bust obstacles, resolve problems, coach them on the go. So high orientation of leading from the front, carrying your people along. You do require the standard high horsepower of intellectual abilities, but at the same point of time, we look for intellectual humility. You should be willing to learn. You should be willing to unlearn. One of the problems of hiring stalwarts from across the range is that people walk in with the intention to improve the company. And what we want them to first do is to learn what we do and then contribute. And that requires a certain kind of humility. So these are the few key things that I would look for in my talent.
Thank you, Rahul. So with all your thoughts on we've got like a very interesting prototype of ideal talent, I must say, if I were to add whatever you all have shared. So Ashish, what would your thoughts be? Do you find some kind of alignment with what our speakers have said with respect to kind of connecting the organizational values with the kind of talent that suits those organizations the most? You work with multiple organizations, and so it'll be interesting to know what your thoughts are on this and what is the kind of trends you're seeing in different organizations.
Thanks, Pooja, for having me on the program. And I think all the leaders before me have spoken about their talent strategies. And what I'm going to share today from an organizational perspective is going to be an amalgamation of what all of them have probably put in. One thing that I want to point out at the beginning is that today, as HR practitioners or talent practitioners, we should stop looking at employees as employees, rather look at them as stakeholders or consumers of talent strategy that we as HR practitioners come up with. That is number one. The most important thing in the attributes that you asked for, Pooja, I think purpose is the key. The employees or the stakeholders or the consumers of our HR strategy, they are going to relate the most with the purpose of the organization, which probably all of the leaders before me were mentioning. What is the end purpose and how are they making a difference to the society at large, not only the organization, be it by doing well in creating the medicines that Namrata was talking about, or what probably Rahul was talking about, or what Madhavi was talking about earlier, And our talent strategy is essentially based on 3 pillars, and this is from an organizational perspective. First one is we need to create greater workforce flexibility. What this essentially means is that remote work, it should allow the organization to probably hire from geographical locations which were earlier not available. The third piece in this first aspect is diversity, not only gender, but ability and disability. So that's the first piece. Second one is about talent sustainability. That's the second pillar. Blocks for this are wellness, which becomes very, very important in today's scenario. The second is upskilling, another very important aspect in today's business scenario because the world is changing. And the third piece is transparency. So the talent strategy should be transparent enough for everyone. The third pillar is digital transformation, right? Create talent pipeline and combine it with intelligent machines. This is the talent strategy which we typically follow at Right Management Manpower Group. and are also taking to our clients. Over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ashish. And over this conversation, we will definitely cover some of these like upskilling and diversity, and those aspects we will cover over this discussion. I'm sure we all strive to develop a winning talent strategy, but a lot has changed in this last 1 year. Businesses have transformed, and we all know, to a certain extent, technology as well as a crisis have played a significant role. So my next question to all of you is, which one aspect of your business that has changed has also kind of influenced a change in people practice, a change in how, people policy, or what kind of, how you're treating your people, there is a change there, people practice. So more of a cause and effect kind of a analogy we're going to talk about here. So Rahul, would you like to go first?
There are multiple areas that have got impacted because of the last 1 year, which I think the only time we can truly call the year as unprecedented is the last year. The three dimensions that have really created impact. First is the need to have a distributed leadership in the organization. We are not one business. We are an amalgamation of 9 different divisions in the company, and we have 4 domestic subsidiaries, 9 international subsidiaries. Never before had we realized the need for multiple decision makers and decision making at multiple levels as we see it today. That has been one of the biggest dimensions. And we believe that the whole area of intellectual ability, allowing people to go to the front line, understand the ground reality, solve for the problem they are facing, that has held us in good stead. The second dimension that has become very relevant is to look at your employee base and see how you can keep furthering the agenda of the business, the company, in more creative ways. And multiple examples, I'll just cite 2. One, we realized that the entire ecosystem that works with us has gone into cash crunch at the beginning of the pandemic. And one bright idea that came was convert every loyalty program into Paytm Cash. And that meant that immediately we were able to re-energize the entire network of about 4.5 lakh artisans and people who do everyday work to earn their living. Things like this have actually given that much needed push and incentive. So building on the distributed leadership is this idea of innovation happening at multiple levels. The third key dimension that has got impacted, which is, as you call, people practice, this whole area of learning and development. Thankfully, we had invested in online learning solution. So we were able to roll out learning programs practically from, I think, the second week of the pandemic. And we were keeping everybody engaged. See, salesmen, it is very difficult for them to sit in one place, and that too at their own house for good 12 weeks and not step out. They are accustomed to stepping out 6 days a week. So making them sit in their house, what are they going to do? It was good that we were able to get them to at least learn, practice, see new things, and so on. This whole idea of self-renewal has caught on to such an extent that right now we are struggling as the HR team to ensure that there is sufficient content that we are able to roll out. So these are the 3 lasting impacts. There are many ones which will, get into the tragedy mode. But I think right now the sense is of optimism, and that's why I would focus here.
Amazing, Rahul. Amit, what would your thoughts be?
So for us, when we look at it from last year, a couple of things which really made us relook at our systems, processes, and also the ways of working. The first was this entire concept of differentiation between the work and the workplace. I think being a traditional manufacturing company, for us, the workplace and the work was always kind of a coincidental to each other. You work only when you are at your workplace, and which essentially means an office. The concept of work from home or work from anywhere from that matter was just not there. We didn't even, our policy itself restricted work from home for about, let's say, 4 days a week, 4 days a month. And that too for certain reasons. To specify those reasons, then only you can work from home. Otherwise, you need to come to office. So this entire concept, has undergone a change. So much so that the functions which were resisting earlier, that things will not work out when the lockdown happened, when people were all working remotely, are now saying that let's roll out a policy around work from anywhere. So now the same functions are coming back to us and saying, can we have a policy of, we don't need people to relocate to Bangalore. Let us hire somebody in Bhubaneswar. Let's hire somebody in Raipur. Let's hire somebody in any other part of the country, and let them work for us, because things can. We have seen things can work on that. So apart from manufacturing, but all other ancillary areas which are there, that entire mindset has undergone a major shift, and we are now looking at rolling out a policy which is around work from anywhere, and also hiring at anywhere. The second important piece for us was also about more focus on the mental health aspect of employees. For us, the health and safety was generally around safety at the workplace, safety in the factories. That used to be the larger piece, and health was more about ergonomics. Health was more about general, medical or hospitalization, or the physical health aspect of it. The mental health as a topic was not there on top of our minds. It used to be somewhere bottom in the list. But somehow now we're talking more about it, and so much so that it's on top of our people agenda at a country level and also at a global level. We're talking about how do we really take care of people during their down times. We are looking at starting our meetings with check-ins, so that let people say what they want to say before we really get into a formal discussion around it. So those are the two broad areas in which we have seen a change happening inside our organization on the people practices.
Thank you, Amit. And I think work from home and awareness on mental health has been mainstream now in most organizations after the pandemic. Madhavi, what about you?
Lots has been covered, so I won't repeat that. And just to be additive, I think obviously all processes, had to become virtual. So the one change that I think I'm particularly pleased and impressed with is virtual interviews. Before the pandemic, if you ask anybody to do online interviews, people would have really struggled. Even when we started the process, some of us were a little skeptical about, how will it all work? We really need to see the person, you need to see the body language and stuff. So I think that whole bit about virtual selection process and virtual onboarding, because you couldn't ask people to come and physically join the workplace, right? So that whole, and the business imperative for us was to really keep the hiring process on. So we've hired some 2,000 plus people last year, and they've all been virtually hired and onboarded. And it's been a huge success, I think. And it's not simple. I mean, I'm saying it in a very simple manner, but just thinking through the processes, the controls, and I think all of you are HR professionals, when you're hiring, there are certain controls you've got to put in place. Just putting that, I think, and looking at those processes and controls with a new lens, I think was a very exciting prospect. And I'm particularly glad that we didn't have to change the joining date for a single individual last year because of the pandemic. We went on with the hiring process. Our campus process was virtual. And I think credit to the team to come up with innovative ideas and thoughts around how to make it all work, So yeah, that's something I thought was pretty interesting for me.
Sure. Thank you, Madhavi. Namrata?
Hi, Pooja. Thank you. And thank you for such a patient listening to all of us. So your job is not easy. I think what struck me were two things. First was the relevance of our business. We were in pharma industry, we were making manufacturing, now we are making a COVID vaccine. So how relevant the business was. I think first thing that struck us, it never struck us before. And the power of our purpose, right? So suddenly we all had passes to come to office. We were every day coming to office. It was such a privilege to work in a pharma company in these days. I thought that was really big for me. The one thing for the employee experience came at the center stage. In this crisis, what kind of employee experience are you giving your employees? That was at the center stage. So that really struck with me. I think all of us have said a lot. I think the emphasis on employee well-being, right? you have to care for your employees even physically. They're no longer resources. They're no longer people who come to work. Whether they're eating good food, whether they're exercising, it became your responsibility as an HR. And that suddenly shift, the role suddenly got added to an HR calendar. It was always there. It took a lot of importance. Even in our HR strategy, well-being found its place in main top 5 items. I think that was there. I think one of the things that also resulted for us is digitization, but more important than digitalization is simplification. We simplified lives for ourselves, right? It was really simple. You don't need to do a medical to join us. You don't need to come for an. So every redundant process got removed. And that is what is there to stay. And if there was one keyword that defined my HR team and our HR work, it was empathy. Empathy to yourself and to your employees. So that was very important.
Thank you, Namrata. I really like the way you said that, a lot of redundant processes have really gone down. I think this is one of the biggest, positive effect of this crisis in business and the, our business ecosystem, which is really good. Ashish, what would your thoughts be on, the transformations in business and how it has led to changing people practices?
Yes. So Pooja, I will talk from the perspective of a consultant. So I am in the business of HR, right? And typically when you're in consulting, it is a very high touch game. Typically, clients want you to be there in the organization, working with them, delivering services that we have agreed upon. One thing that happened for me was a total change in the mindset of the client. A lot of services and solutions that we probably provide to our clients moved on to the digital platforms. Luckily for us as right management, we had invested in technology. So Rahul, rather I'll have a chat with you after this event is done on content. So there was all the assessment centers that we were probably doing for our clients. Just to give an example, went online. All the learning programs that we were doing for our clients went online, and probably COVID did what no other chief digital officer could probably do for the organization or the industry at large. It was a super catalyst of getting people to move to the digital formats. Like, to give you an example, we always had MS Teams for the last 2.5 years. We really didn't use it. We moved on to MS Teams, and now most of our meetings are happening on MS Teams. Just to give an example, that was a major change for me. Apart from that, internally for our organization, wellness, a lot of focus on wellness, a lot of focus on learning. Most of our HR practices moved online, like we did for our clients. So that's my take on this.
Thank you, Ashish. So we are all on the same page when I say that talent is at the heart of everything that's happening in an organization today. And we've already covered that wellness programs are gathering steam, and mental health and employee experience initiatives are all being rolled out. But my next question is that what else is required to develop talent with respects to competencies, because the core competencies are changing very rapidly with digitalization. And what kind of, how are you kind of helping fresh talent pick up skills as well as talent which is already there in your organization for 8 to 9 years? So how are you managing this entire talent development ecosystem? We'll start with Madhavi.
Thanks, Pooja. I see some really interesting questions on the chat, and I hope we get time to answer some of them. I think obviously times have changed, how learning was 30 years back to now. The learning environment obviously has to be very dynamic to handle a multi-generational workforce. So what we do is we offer a suite of multiple learning formats. We don't have like one size fits all. We have formats across formal, informal learning. And research has shown that learning is not limited to just traditional classrooms, So we've invested in tools and resources, and we use some very clever technology and algorithms to make learning to align learning to the needs of the learner and not waiting for a group to come together, So training reaches the learner via various options, a desktop, iPad, even mobiles, So because some of the newer generation do not want to even go to a laptop, they want to access it on their mobile, right? And we have learning modules also customized. We have short video sessions, short learning sessions for somebody who just wants to spend 10 minutes on a subject. If somebody wants to go into detail, we have like a 2-hour session. And somebody wants to really go in depth, we have a day-long session. So it's kind of customized really, And we've kind of kept the learning bit very, very interactive. So people give their feedback, as they go through the session. So that's for, across the organization. For freshers, what we do is when freshers join us, obviously they've not had work experience. We do have very structured classroom sessions for them, throughout the first year they're there to teach them both the technical and the process skills, and also sort of help them understand, what is required of them at the workplace. I could go on and on, so I'll just sort of keep it to this right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Madhavi. Namrata, what about you in your organization?
First of all, it's a wonderful question. So thank you for asking this. I think it made me think, right? So I think one of the things that we have done very consciously, Pooja, is define these must-have experiences. Normally, if you see in the HR paradigm and the way we were working, we used to define skills, competencies, and so what we have gone ahead and designed is what are the must-have experiences that each person must have. For example, if I'm doing an HR role in a plant, I must have 2 IR interactions and IR situations that I go into. So what I'm saying is, first is must-have experiences. Second is, how do you create this must-have experiences? So what we have done that we have started these sessions called Juggernauts. So these sessions are for people to gain those experiences. So there's 6 things that we've done. The first things, we have started something called internal gigs. That means I have 1 hour. In a week, I can give 4 hours. What are the opportunities? So people apply for these internal gigs, right? The second thing is that we have started doing is study missions within and outside the organization. So for example, the R&D folks will spend a day in the life of a sales guy and figure out what kind of a life, what kind of life that is, right? The third thing that we have very consciously done is that reverse mentoring. It's called reverse mentoring. The fourth thing that we have done is called growth bridges. So reverse mentoring is that I teach the management committee members on technology, on how to post more photographs on Instagram, just as an example, right? So it's going very well. The fourth thing, right? It's the fourth. Fourth thing is the growth bridges. We have created these growth bridges. So what these growth bridges really are, so we take a lot of management trainees from IIMs and a lot of technical trainees from IITs, but our internal people, we give them an opportunity to apply to those bridges, that if they go through those stints, they will get that equivalent. If you're asking for freshers, I'm also trying to answer that as I go along. But one of the things that I'm very proud of, the things that we do, we take people from 12th class, we train them in our plants, we help them graduate and take them as an officer when they graduate. So that is the kind of experiences they study while they earn, right? And this is, we go to interior villages, wherever our plants are based, and take these people, these are called, and they create something called self-managed teams. And the last thing that we have done is we have started these learning journeys, we call them, which is called transformational journeys. So we have stopped doing long back learning programs. We only do journeys now, right? And we create those journeys. So those are a few things that we've started.
Thank you, Namrata. So these are really great insights for the audience. I'm sure they must be making notes, because you all are really giving us great examples from your organization and real life activities that you're doing. So really insightful for everybody. Rahul, what would your take be?
When we started trying to solve for this, of how do we engage talent, how do we keep them tuned, how do we make them grow and do more wonderful things, we realized it has basically 3 pillars. We had to get the new guys become productive quickly. The normal method that we have always used for inducting new talent, whether it was campus or lateral, has been to take them through a planned induction session. Now, we changed the people who inducted them. We added buddies. We made the whole process, while virtual was anyways working for us, we had to ensure that there were more informal check-ins to ensure that they were getting what we were wanting for them to pick up. And that process helped us cut down the path to productivity. We formally measure this by using a metric of how people are integrating with the company. And we have seen that first it was held at the pre-COVID level, and now it has been improving. I've been thinking, why didn't we get this idea earlier? The second thing was to get all these people active and engaged. We have spent a lot of energy in the area of keeping the employees engaged, activities, weekends, yoga classes, Zumba classes, Diwali celebration, Christmas celebration. Always keep engaging. And we realized we don't have to engage them, we have to engage the entire family. So activities for kids, activities for spouses, all kinds of stuff. That has meant that everybody is fresh. We introduced the concept of unmeetings. One day in the month is marked, there will be no meeting. And in fact, there will be an interaction at the team level, but it will be agendaless. People are having fun, chit-chatting, singing, telling stories, jokes. Just bring that corridor back. Unfortunately, the corridor is no longer available, but can we create a virtual break in the whole thing? And the last but not the least, while the formal learning will happen, we also said people would like to possibly choose few learning which are not connected to their roles, which are things of interest. And we are right now, a pilot is running on this, and we would soon be rolling this out to get more of Pidilite people to choose their learning path and pick on other areas of learning which are not necessarily connected to what they do. I have a feeling that if you keep your talent engaged, talent has a way by which it will do its job. You have to keep them engaged and you have to enable them to do what they can do best. Allow them to make mistakes, move forward. So the combination of engagement, distributed leadership works like magic.
Amazing. Thank you, Rahul. Amit, what about you? How are you helping and motivating them to develop new age competencies?
So some of the things, apart from, I'll not repeat whatever has been said, because some of them are very similar. But some of the key things which are kind of different, which we are doing. Number one, we have something called as Volvo Group University internally. It's our a learning function where we have where we create those programs which are online, offline combination, which are focused towards specific needs, both at a local level as well as at a global level and also at an individual level. So that's the fundamental nodal point for us within the HR as a center of expertise. Which we have created, which has the clear academies. You have a technical academy, you have a leadership academy, you have project management academy, and sales academy, so on. So very focused learning content is developed by VGU and kind of delivered to our employees as well as to the businesses. The second important piece which we focus on is on a leader-led learning, because we fundamentally believe the best learning experience can be given by the leaders themselves, because they are able to then mesh the organizational context towards the concepts which we are trying to provide to the employees, both freshers as well as people who are there in the system in the kind of a mid-careers. So we really encourage more and more leaders to kind of lead these programs and conduct those learning sessions for our employees. The third critical piece which we do is we expose them towards cross-functional projects. We do believe that everybody can contribute beyond what their current roles are or what their current responsibilities are. So across each country level, we have certain projects which we create where we invite nominations from people. We say, no, these are the country projects, these are over and above your responsibilities. if you think you resonate to any of them, you want to contribute to any of them, please come and join us. And that gives us a good learning, because they are, number one, they get to work on areas which are beyond their current business or function. And then they learn something new, and the bargain organization also kind of helps from their perspective. But to me, the biggest thing which it does is it really brings in collaboration. It really brings in a larger perspective to the organization when these people are part of these cross-functional, cross-business projects. Then we have something we call as a talent mobility forum. So for each functions, like we have purchasing, we have finance, we have HR, sales. So there we are talking about the key talent which is across different businesses of ours. And then how do we really provide them with opportunity to have an exposure towards another business through short-term assignments. And that again is an effort towards building a more group level leadership and not just focused on the business level leadership. And the last piece, which is the most critical one for us, is how do we really develop our managers as coaches? Because to us, that is the key factor in the case of any employee's life cycle in an organization. If a manager is a one who is able to coach the employees towards his or her development, that's the best thing which can happen to an employee. So a lot of our learning interventions are also focused towards coaching abilities of the people managers to help them coach their employees towards growth mindset, towards the skills of the future, and how can they really develop themselves for the next level roles they really want to look at.
Thank you, Amit, for sharing those points. Ashish, your thoughts on this, and to that, I would also like to add, how are these technologies, HR technologies, helping also to, create great employee experiences as well as help them with, developing competencies and learning programs. So if you could add this also in your answer would be nice.
Yeah. So thanks, Pooja. And I think everyone before me has given their points. And that is the trend that I see in the industry today. To give you an example, in the last 18 months, I have been working with 3 of the largest public sector banks in the country. One of them being the bank which is related to policy making for the country. And what I see is that the competency framework in itself, the life of a competency is short-lived if you do not define it properly. Right? To give an example, what I'm seeing in especially these 3 public sector banks that I'm talking about, which are making the difference in the country today, is that agility is one competency or a new age competency that is being very, very closely being monitored. Right? And agility has manifestations in learnability, agility regarding to tech, which is digital, regarding to adaptability, and embracing change. So these are the competencies that I'm seeing, new age competencies that are really there in the market. What I'm seeing also, Pooja, is that one of standalone trainings have given way to journeys now. There is a lot of focus on long-term journeys and experiential learning, which almost everyone spoke about. And there is a lot of focus on technology. Enablement is happening through technology. What is happening because of technology is that there's a huge amount of democratization of learning. It is available for each and everyone. To give an example, you go into Clubhouse today, the fundamentals remain the same. You go to Clubhouse today and you can access and get exposure to any topic under the sun, right? So what Right Management has done, and what I'm seeing is that we have online technologies for assessment. So we are coming out with a platform called Right Assess. Sit anywhere and it will give you the experience of a live face-to-face assessment center. We have a mobile application which is providing bite-sized learning for each and every individual. So much so, say for example, if I like learning through reading, I will get inputs related to learning on reading. If somebody else, say for example, you like learning through videos, you will start getting inputs through videos, and that is the actual utilization of technologies like an AI in the system.
Thank you, Ashish. Namrata, my next question is for you. What I would like to know from you is, in this HR technology adoption curve, where do you find your organization? How evolved or mature you think your organization is with respect to adopting people analytics and HR technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning to predict employee behaviors and attitudes. So where do you think your organization is? What are your plans? How important do you think are these technologies going ahead?
Great. So it's great thing you're asking this question because Pooja, I think I want to talk about my perspective and where our organization is both. So first is whenever you digitalize anything or whenever you go, so the difference between digitize and digitalize, we are not reducing paper, but we are actually digitalizing things, right? So I think at the heart is employee experience, right? And while we have automated a lot in the world for people in the organization, but the user experience has always taken a back seat. Why can't my SAP or ERP work like Facebook or an Instagram, right? Why does it have to be so cumbersome? So what we have done is so there are three things in HR that we are working on: data, design, and analytics. Sorry, digital design and analytics. So we are doing digital, we are also doing design. So between digital and analytics, our focus is design. So that is where the employee experience is at, right? Employee experience is mainly in the design stage. So we have something called Studio 5B. You can Google it if you want. It's a design studio which actually works with us in doing this. Second thing, from digitalizing, we are going to something called platform thinking. So why does it have to be my organization alone that does learning? Why can't all pharma companies come together and have a platform of learning? Why don't we learn from each other's experience? So you remember the example of Airbnb, right? So where there's a platform provided where users and consumers come together. And that is where we are heading. And that is what our current thinking is, that doing that. So only one aspect that we focus on, which is the employee experience. And it has to be mobile enabled, it has to be simple, and it has to be so intuitive. The word is intuitive, so that employee absolutely loves it. Coming to the system, you don't have to push for adoption. So that is the aim. Are we there yet? Not yet, but that is the aim. I think our target is December 31st this year, we should be there. The employee platform and the platform thinking. I think the new age platform thinking is great for HR. We should really work it.
Thank you, Namrata. I'll just take one audience question here. This is by Shari Qureshi. He's asking how you respond to the stress or disengagement in this virtual work environment. So I think it's a very relevant question, because stress is bound to come and disengagement is bound to happen when you're working alone in front of your laptop. So who would like to take this question? I mean, anyone can feel free to.
I can just start and then other people can add. Sure. So it's a very, very good question. And obviously when the lockdown started, people obviously felt the stress. I can tell you my own experience, started working from home and, I would get up from my desk at 9:30 p.m., in the evening. And I was like, after 2 or 3 months, I said, what am I doing, and what's happening really? And I think for us, the good thing was the leadership took stock of all the issues, because obviously employees were grappling with a lot of issues. Their families were at home, elders who couldn't step out. So what we did, and I mean, there are many things we did, but I think one of the things that we did was really, we said the workplace of the employee now is the home, right? So how do we include other people in the families into our sort of initiative? So we did something which is very interesting, which is called Story Trails, where senior leaders actually every Friday did story sessions for staff children. And it was like just very small groups, 25 people to a group, where the senior leader would read a story in a very interesting manner. And I tell you, the feedback we got from employees was stunning. I mean, it was just a simple thing to do, no cost initiative. So we did that. We did a lot of health sessions for staff and their families, where the staff families joined, anybody from the families could join and ask the doctors questions, because there's just so much knowledge that was missing. So I won't talk about lots of other things, but these two I thought I'll highlight here.
Yeah, I would want even Rahul to just give me one quick point. How did you manage to check disengaged teams with the virtual work? Just one point, Rahul. We have a lot of other interesting questions also.
So I'll just say that we implemented what we call as digital etiquette. The start time of the day can't be earlier than 10. The end time can't be more than 6. And in between, there will be a 1-hour lunch break. Meetings outside this will not be scheduled. Of course, this is not at 100% compliance. But when we started, it was at 68%. And this month, we are at 91%.
Rahul, can I join your organization?
Please find a job for me and come over.
Okay, one question is that did you see any compromise in the quality of hiring when you were doing virtual hiring? So do you think...
I haven't seen any compromise.
Okay. Amit, any quick point from you on this?
Not a compromise on the hiring piece, but definitely it required a lot of change in the mindset toward the hiring manager side. Because they were more tentative about should we hire, should we not hire. I have not met the person face to face. It's different to meet a person and see the body language versus meeting a person on a Zoom call or a MS Teams call. So a lot of learning had to happen on the other side. But in terms of the quality of people we hired last year through these online means, I don't think so any concern was there. But the concern happened after that. And that concern is more about the fact that how do you assimilate them in the team? See, all of us, when we went into this virtual mode, we had met each other, seen each other, worked with each other. So once you have a personal connect, and then even if you are in offline mode or online mode, it still works because there's a chemistry developed between the people. So when somebody is new in the team, the person doesn't even know anyone, doesn't know the sensitivities. What should I say? What should I not say? What's appropriate? What's not appropriate? That's where the challenge starts to happen. So the concern was more about that, and the effort was how to assimilate that person in the team, and that required a lot of effort from the hiring manager as well as the entire peer network there to make the person comfortable. So we did a lot of sessions around those people towards socializing the new hires in the team as such. So that's where the focus was more.
Thank you, Amit. Very valid points out there. Ashish, you want to quickly add something to that?
Yeah, so I second what Amit just mentioned. Hiring wasn't an issue. The issue was onboarding and assimilating the people who have joined in. And what I'll just share one client experience over here. What this client did was earlier their onboarding time used to be 5 days for the induction program that used to happen. What they did was, apart from the 5 days, they also created a 3-day social networking session for their folks. So what essentially was happening is that everybody, just to give you one example, there will be pizza which will be delivered at your place at different locations that these people are at. And then it's a conversational session in which 10-15 of the team members are joining in and is being moderated and managed by the human resources team. So this was one example which I wanted to share.
Okay, thank you, Ashish. So one quick point, I want you all to help me with is that, we talk about agility and we talk about organizations have to be agile and talent has to be agile. But at the same time, the business world is so dynamic that it's also important for organizations, to kind of stay rock solid and be stable also, which is possible only if you latch onto some, practices and policies and the way you've been doing businesses over years. So how, isn't that a contradiction? And how do you achieve that? How do you, suddenly become that agile and, help nurture very agile talent? I mean, I see it as a little contradicting phenomenon here.
See, I don't see the contradiction. Agility without an anchor will actually be detrimental. That would become practically escape velocity. You will get out of the orbit. So you got to have an anchor, and that anchor is your culture. That anchor is the process. That anchor is the team engagement. If you have the anchor, agility can be managed without actually losing control or losing a sense of connect. That was my point. Namrata.
Thank you, Rahul. Namrata?
So I think both agility and stability come from leaders. Its organization is an entity and the leaders represent the entity. I think in the time of crisis, in times of change, for example, in the COVID crisis, my CEO actually went, he came from Israel, he went to each plant, he met everybody, of course, with precautions, but he did that. And I think somewhere he kept saying to us, right, throughout, there was just one message consistently he gave us to over and over, is that life has given us lemons, we need to make lemonade. And what is the COVID medicines that we can come up with? How can we use COVID as an opportunity? And he kept saying that, and we were not even worried about COVID anymore. And we worked with agility. There was no. So I think what I'm trying to say is the stability and agility go hand in hand, but it starts from the top for a leadership to role model and give it to us.
Amazing. Thank you. Any closing points, Madhavi?
I think I'll just respond to some of the questions which has come through in terms of, talent and should we take graduates, postgraduates, undergraduates, and somebody talked about the campuses that, companies miss out on. My view is that once you start working and you gain the experience, you can make good anything, your institute, your acads or whatever. I think the idea is that, you continuously need to evolve, stay relevant and build the skills that, will require you to grow in the organization.
Thank you, Madhavi. Any closing remarks, Amit, from you?
I'll just say the same thing. To your last question about this contradiction, I think it's an important point, which you raised, and I briefly alluded to in my initial answer also, that it's important to leverage the power of and rather than the tyranny of or. So how can you have your talent, which is rooted into legacy, but still futuristic in its thoughts? That's how it is, because if you are able to do that, that's how organization will always go forward. You need to have a strong base, then only you can take a leap from there. If you are on a sticky wicket, you can't take a leap from there. So to me, again, it's not contradiction. That's the way the future is going to be. So it's very critical for talent, to be able to, and I'm saying for the sake of repetition again, to be able to deal with polarities at the same time. That is going to be fundamentally defining the talent of the future. And people need to move towards, towards managing these two, supposedly two ends of the spectrum, but essentially to me is the same.
Thank you, Amit. And most of you are from legacy organizations. So Ashish, quickly, one point from you, which will be the closing point. Do you see a difference in agility when it comes to legacy organization, or it comes to this new age startup, small companies?
So I really don't think so. And I will go back to what probably Namrata mentioned, that it all boils down to leadership and the kind of leadership that you have in the organization. And to end this, I'll probably put in 3 points. I think it is all about mentoring over management. And that's what the leaders need to keep in mind. The importance of empathy is going to continuously keep going up for leadership. That's the second one. The third is leaders need to provide psychological safety for the people who are coming in the organization. What essentially that means is risk-taking and failure should not be reprimanded. It should be rewarded rather, and to be learned from. And what leaders need to probably do is link the entire thing to the larger purpose. Once that is happening, it all is taken care of. And probably what Namrata was giving an example of her leader, traveling all the way from Israel. Now that is what he's essentially trying to convey, the message out there.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking out time and giving us so many points. And there have been great takeaways for the audience as well as for us at ETHR World. Wonderful discussion here, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pooja.